Here you doing? A professor of the University of Valladolid unveiled extreme unsanitary situation and unsanitary environment in the palace of Versailles beyond our imagination in contrast to gorgeous lifestyle there. So like people rinse their mouths with urine and spread lead around their face to fill pores. So they had a sense of hygiene which is totally away from our sense of hygiene, and it is no exaggeration to say they had no sense of hygiene from our viewpoint. So speaking of Palace of Versailles from 17th to 18th century, it was the center of power of France, and the kings of France, Louis XIV and 15th and 16th, built the most gorgeous king palace in the history of France. However, in contrast to the gorgeous appearance of the building, the palace was completely covered with disgusting smell of urine and poops around there. And people of any era believed that the era they lived had most sanitary situation, most sanitary environment. But looking back history from our viewpoint, who lived in 21st century, there's so many things that amaze us. So the first things like people caught up in beliefs that water might develop into all kinds of illness in their common sense. So like the plague epidemic spread around all European countries then implanted fear against water in people's minds, and touching water was thought to be dangerous thing in France back then in 17th and 18th century. So no matter what kind of situation they were in, they didn't use lukewarm water for bathing, because if they used lukewarm water to wash their body, all pores on their skin were open, and if pores on the skin are open, virus might come into body from open pores on the skin. So moreover, it was believed that bathing brought abortion and infertility, because it was believed that people's vitality was deprived of water. So on the other hand, water was believed to have a healing effect to specific disease. But basically, water was believed to be dangerous thing in France back then. So people maintained hygiene without using water as much as possible. The first thing the king and queen do right after they wake up in the morning is like washing their hand with water in front of selected aristocrats every morning. And this is the only time they touch water in the day. And when they wash their body, they just wipe their body with a towel made by cotton soaked into perfume. And people didn't place importance on body hygiene, but they weirdly cared too much about the condition of underwear. So at the time, aristocrats changed underwear many times a day, and the form of underwear they had was a kind of negligee regardless of man or woman, and this was a type of thing that emphasized their social status, because this type of underwear was so expensive then, and normal citizens weren't able to buy. So people with high social status, so like aristocrats, deliberately show the gorgeous lace around their neck and around their wrists. And treatment of underwear was seen as important, as it was written on the testament when they were dead as well. So people at the time didn't wash their head as well. So it was hardly seen that people didn't have lice on their heads. So when they wash their head, they use a dry shampoo and sprinkle some kind of powder around their head to cover up the smell of their heads. But so many people lost their hair while still young. Inevitably, wigs became popular among people back then. Additionally, it was really common that people had dirty and bad teeth, and this was limited to the case that they had a teeth, fortunately, because people normally had periodontal disease and missed their some teeth. For that reason, most of the people drawn in the portraits shut their mouth with no smiling. So when brushing their teeth, they used a small fabric bag with powdered marble and bold plant roots. And in order to cover up the smell of the mouth, they chewed herbs and cigarettes, or sometimes they rinse their mouths with urine. And ladies of aristocrats at the time needed to show their skins white as much as possible, because white skin implicated healthy skin, healthy body, and healthy heart. So scratches and abscesses on the skin has to be omitted completely among aristocrats. And beautiful skin was proof of aristocracy, because brown tan skin was seen as a labor class that indicates not aristocracy. So in order to keep their face white, in order to keep their body white, white powder made by white lead was widely used among aristocrats. But this was a face foundation, this was a body foundation, but it was really poisonous to human body, and it had a bad adverse effect of astringents, and it dried skin extremely, causing premature aging of the skin and heavy eye disease and respiratory disorders. So moreover, ladies aristocrats put artificial mole on their face to be more attractive to people, and that is called mouche, which means a fly in French, made by taffeta. In many cases, they put it on their face to cover up scars of smallpoxes and places that doesn't look good. So basically, people from aristocrats to general citizens had no sense of hygiene at the golden age of Kingdom of France, controlled by Louis XIV, 15th, 16th, Versailles Palace. So they didn't take a bath basically, and they hated using water. So their body was normally covered with filth and lice and terrible smell. So they basically cover up with places that doesn't look good, and body odor with foundation and perfume and herbs or cigarettes or something like that. So they didn't even have the head to doubt sanitary situation first, to think why plague epidemic spread around European countries. So in medieval Europe, there were so many superstitions related to religions, unfounded stereotype of medicine believed by nations. So looking it back from the modern society, hygiene environment in Europe was terrible enough not to be able to live in at an impossible level.